In the world of Pokemon speedruns, cheating is quite rare. In fact, it's been an entire decade since an actual member of the community attempted such a disgraceful act. The few that have popped up outside of this range have usually been total newcomers that have no idea what they're doing and are just looking for some clout. But the thing about the cheater we're talking about today is that they went in it for the long haul, integrating themselves in the community at a very slow yet believable pace at first, before eventually pushing their way to the top by crafting fake runs over the course of 11 months. And the crazy thing is, this story doesn't just involve cheating. It also involves thousands of dollars on the line in the form of bounties for reaching certain speedrunning goals. Goals that were so ridiculous that the cheating became quite clear once they faked one of the most unrealistic achievements in Pokemon speedrunning that I've ever seen. So today, we'll be taking a look at the cheater Jodiwee's rise and fall, his response to this entire fiasco, and the aftermath following this situation. To become a world record contender in a Pokemon speedrun, an immense amount of knowledge, skill, and patience is required. Because while luck might be a massive factor in these games, what separates the pros from the noobs is how you handle every single good or bad situation, on top of how skillfully you can traverse the overworld. The cheater Jodiwee did not have any of these factors in check, and with everything we know today, it's quite clear that they had almost no patience for getting good at speedrunning Pokemon. Now, to begin the story of their downfall, we need to go all the way back to January 4th, 2023, the day Pokemon speedrunning cheater Jodiwee infiltrated the ranks of Pokemon speedrunners. As far as we can tell from the first few months, Jodiwee actually didn't seem to cheat at all and just sort of blended in with everyone. They even earned some pretty respectable times in a few obscure categories before moving on to some of the more popular ones. These runs include 7 personal bests in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and 11 personal bests in Pokemon Red and Blue, achieved in the span of 6 months. But after a slow rise in the community, his personal best started coming in at quite an alarming pace once he began to speedrun the most popular Pokemon speedrunning category, Pokemon Red any percent glitchless. Jodiwee would begin to post screenshots of his split times almost every single day with a new personal best for nearly 2 weeks straight. But not once did a video of any of these personal bests show up publicly.
I will say, not recording when you're starting out is not suspicious. My first game was Red, glitchless. I did runs of that game for probably about 4 or 5 months before I, 1, started recording, and 2, talked to anyone in the community. However, I wasn't posting screenshots of all of my finish time. It's kind of a difference in mindset there. He clearly wanted people to see that he was progressing, and in that mindset, it's a little weirder to not record or submit any of your actual videos.
But after about nearly 2 weeks of non-stop personal best, one of the moderators of the speedrunning Discord did eventually ask, why haven't you uploaded any of your runs to speedrun.com?
I don't remember my headspace at the time, but I probably saw this guy posting. This would have been like his 7th screenshot posted in a week and a half or something like that. And I checked online, and it's like, he hasn't posted any of these. And it's like, are you not recording? What's going on here, man?
Their response? They apparently didn't have the hardware to do it yet and couldn't run on emulator since their computer sucked. So they grinded offline until they could get their hands on a Game Boy Player attachment, not expecting to get these crazy times. But the thing is, this response makes 0 sense if we take a look at one of his very first submitted runs a couple of months before this message, because Jodiwee's very first speedrun was recorded, submitted, and done on a Nintendo DS emulator. And according to many of the experts in the Pokemon speedrunning Discord, the emulators for Nintendo DS have easily proven to chug way more than the speedrun-approved Game Boy emulator, Gambate. Even running Discord itself takes up more resources than the Gambate emulator, meaning this could have potentially been the moment he was caught red-handed.
This early, nothing was ever going to be done about it.
Yeah, for sure.
With just that. And like every once in a while, there'd just be something else weird coming up, like someone who asked him for his red splits. And he's like, oh, I don't save my splits. And it's like, okay, that's weird. Like, why? I think we have a pretty good idea of why now, but at the time, you can't just come out of the gate guns blazing saying you're definitely cheating everything based on that.
With Jodiwee not submitting any recorded runs, this meant that there was no hard evidence against him, which let him slither even further into the community to the point where he would earn the trust from people around him to make his runs believable. And with everyone's trust secured, It became the perfect time to claim their first cheated world record speedrun in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl 80% Manipless. The rules of this category are that you're not allowed to use RNG manipulation whatsoever. For those that don't know what RNG manipulation is, it's essentially the act of controlling seemingly random events in Pokemon. Things like the characteristics of captured or bred Pokemon, NPC movement patterns, and the chances of finding a shiny Pokemon are all governed by pseudo-random number generators. Players can exploit this by manipulating the date and time setting to control the outcome of pseudo-random events, effectively becoming the architects of their Pokemon traits and eliminating randomness from the equation. But because this category disallows RNG manipulation, players will be at the mercy of random encounters, the stats and natures of your Pokemon, and most importantly, a randomly generated hidden power. The TM for hidden power is received quite early on in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and is considered to be the holy grail of all Pokemon moves when it comes to speedrunning the game. The way the move works is that its typing and base power are determined by the IVs of your Pokemon. For speedrunning purposes, hidden power grass, water, ground, fighting, and steel are easily the best ones since the first gym contains rock-type Pokemon, which is a type that heavily resists and can easily overpower the fastest Pokemon to use for this category, Chimchar. Without a good hidden power, fighting extra trainers in order to evolve Chimchar is almost certainly required to beat the first gym optimally. But considering how slow this strategy of evolving is, it's not really an option if you want to obtain a world record time in this category. And to emphasize to you all how brutal resetting for a good hidden power is, runners of the Manipless category won't know until at least a minimum of 20 minutes have passed whether or not they have a good enough hidden power. And grinding for this hidden power is not something W.I.P was willing to do. What he wanted instead was results that he wasn't getting, and decided it was time to take RNG into his own hands through splicing. The act of splicing is when you take apart multiple sections of a speedrun, put them together to create a much faster run, then pretend the splice run was done in a single instance of play. This method of cheating is quite common, and exactly how W.I.P obtained a Pokemon Diamond and Pearl 80% Manipless speedrun of 101.19. Which by some miracle beat the world record by exactly 1 second. Slight suspicions did arise during this time, but unfortunately for the verifiers of this run, W.I.P had now integrated himself into the community as someone who could likely reach these times thanks to a few more submitted runs on the leaderboard. And with nothing crazy weird on the surface, the run was accepted as the new world record without a hitch, awakening a monster inside of W.I.P since he was able to get away with what seems to be his first cheated world record time. From here, W.I.P would begin to shift between 6 different categories over the span of 3 months. And even though these categories played pretty differently, with the times he was slowly posting for everyone to see, it truly seemed like he might have enough skill to at least pick up and play near a top level. But this was all a sham to make his next faked world record seem believable. Starting off with a 4-day grind for Pokemon Red 80% world record, a 1-day grind for the Pokemon Yellow 80% world record, and a category killing world record in Pokemon Blue No Save Corruption speedrun. All of these runs were eventually proven to be cheated, and at the pace W.I.P was submitting these times, it actually did seem a little suspicious to certain private circles within the community. But accusing someone of cheating in a community that hadn't had a notable cheater in nearly 10 years was a hard thing to do when there wasn't really much evidence supporting this claim. It was all completely circumstantial. The guy did love flaunting around his screenshots instead of footage after all, and those screenshots can only get you so far in proving that someone cheated. But soon enough, the proof that W.I.P cheated would come to the community faster than he could supposedly pull off these incredibly fast times, as he was about to make the 2 biggest mistakes that eventually got him caught. His first biggest mistake was trying to fake a top time in Pokemon Sapphire 80% glitchless. When we take a look at the timeline between W.I.P's last PB and the very first run he ever set in Pokemon Sapphire, you'd find out that W.I.P was supposedly able to pull off a 2-hour personal best in only 4 days, earning him a spot in the top 10. This was shared with the community once again through another screenshot with no recording attached to it. And in order to dodge anyone from asking for proof of this time, he conveniently claimed that OBS had crashed in the middle of recording his run. But But the proof for this specific personal best didn't actually matter, since we didn't have to wait long for him to produce an actual run for everyone to look through. Because not even 4 days later, W.I.P posted a recording of a speedrun that put him in second place and was only about 5 seconds behind the world record.
I found no fewer than 3 separate instances where he healed in very stupid situations, one of which right before Champ cost him world record. Side note, we're now pretty confident that the reason he healed there was because he was too fast in his splicing and he didn't want to get world record, so he had to heal to slow down enough to have it go under the radar. When he ran Sapphire, he did that on his DS. He loses about 8 seconds over the course of the run due to frame rate differences. And if you account for those 8 seconds, his run was world record.
This type of speedrun takes months of dedication to get good at, and even more skill to beat the world record. But even at the most basic level of speedrunning Sapphire, one of the very first things a speedrunner will learn is you need to walk up to and talk to your mom before you leave town.
He just walks straight up and his mom goes and talks to him. And that's not only slower, he had gained an extra 7 steps by talking to mom. With the way Sapphire and step counter works, every time you make a mistaken step, it can affect how the Wingle Manip will come out when you do it.
You claim to have 1,100 attempts. It's like, okay, have you ever watched a run of this game before? You're like 6-7 minutes into the run and you don't know to talk to mom.
I mean, I had never verified a run where someone had talked to mom, so I was confused.
It's like starting up a game of Red, getting through the intro, and then not knowing in what corner the stairs are after doing 1,000 attempts. Like, it's unbelievable.
There was no attempt to fix the step counter, and then he did his Wingle Manip. The corresponding NPC path he saw is not matching to any of the NPC paths that people are normally like trained to see if you practice Wingle Manip.
The likelihood that someone was able to reach a second place time on the leaderboard without this knowledge is quite low, and made this run incredibly fishy. But even if W.I.P could fake a successful manipulation through splicing, it was quite apparent that he couldn't pull off the pure skill required for all of the mock bike tricks that top runners would know.
The way we do the run to bike manips in Sapphire, you have an 8-frame window if you're doing your movement perfectly in order to run to a certain tile, and then from that point within those 8 or 7 frames you have to mount your bike and then start your movement in order to pass safely. And in every single case within that run, he did not do it within the 7 or 8 frames. So the fact that not a single one was hit, and the fact that he wasn't caught or punished for any of them, that's not necessarily proof on its own. It's more just like wow, like what another level of luck that this run has, that he got lucky enough to not get caught on every single one of these spinners.
But even with all this awful play and pretty good luck, the moderators still didn't have enough evidence to conclusively say that his runs were cheated quite yet, which unfortunately left verifiers no choice but to accept his Sapphire run onto the leaderboard.
I would just think about if the roles were reversed, the worst thing I could feel is if someone accused me of cheating when I was doing everything legitimate. I didn't want to do that to someone else.
And W.I.P would go on to cheat again and again and again. But this time, he would take cheating to the next level by going after a bunch of goal times that were tied to bounties. Bounties are essentially a reward of some kind given to community members when they reach certain speedrunning goals. For context in this situation, there was a bounty set at $2,500 for having the Pokemon Red Manipless world record by the date of February, which, as you may have guessed, he managed to cheat together a time good enough to do this only 4 days after getting his top 2 time in Pokemon Sapphire. The interesting thing about this situation is he actually reached out to the person who set up these bounties a day before his Sapphire run went public, asking them if the runs for these bounties could be performed offline in order to plan out even more splice runs. The even worse part about the bounty for the Pokemon Red Manipless category is that it had already been claimed by PokeGuy early this year, which could have stolen his opportunity to claim the money if no one else achieved this by February. But W.I.P didn't care, and would post the time to the leaderboards, have it get verified, then move on to the most ridiculous bounty and speedrun times that he could have gone for. At this point, point, you could tell that W.I.P was incredibly full of himself, because not only did he fake a sub 1 hour Pokemon Diamond and Pearl Manipulus speedrun during a race with other people, but he then had the bright idea to break the hardest world record in Pokemon speedrunning history that was tied to a $6,000 bounty, the 143 in Pokemon Red 80% glitchless.
Well, I'll start out by saying that it is widely believed that 143 will be the last minute break that can ever be achieved by a human, no matter what is found in these games in the future. Red as a game is already, it's almost certainly the most optimized, like, glitchless category across any of the Pokemon games. To make it past, the halfway point, there are like a dozen different fights where if the AI just chooses the wrong move, you're dead. And the reason you have to risk that is because of a Gen 1 mechanic called Red Bar, where if you're at low health, the game runs like twice as fast, which means we're often just one unlucky move away from dying and losing the run. Even if you're playing perfectly, like, everything comes down to luck if you want a time that good.
As you can see, obtaining a 143 is beyond ridiculous and just outright impossible for someone like W.I.P to get within a reasonable amount of attempts or time. And time was not on W.I.P's side. You see, the $6,000 bounty for Pokemon Red 143 was actually split between two different bounties. $5,000 of it was set aside for the first person who could get a 144, while the second bounty added a bonus of $1,000 for a 143 alongside it. But that $1,000 bounty had an expiration date of December 31st, which meant W.I.P only had a single month to get what many believe to be the final minute barrier in the oldest, most popular, and optimized Pokemon speedrunning category to ever exist. And by some Christmas miracle, he had done it live on his Twitch channel on December 26, 2023. This totaled up to about 6 world records, 4 personal bests within the top 5, and $8,500 in prize money in the span of 2 months. But this was the moment everything went downhill for W.I.P. Because almost immediately as the 143 ended, a top runner and moderator of the speedrunning Discord, WaveWarrior, requested that he reset his run on the spot to prove whether or not it was a live run instead of a recording. But instead of providing potential proof, W.I.P decided to do the most suspicious thing in the world and end his stream out of seemingly nowhere for posting what is now the biggest meme in Pokemon speedrunning history. A screenshot of his 143 splits with a message saying, "Getting lucky is not a crime." And in order to dodge any allegations, he responded saying that he didn't have his chat up during the run and wasn't able to see the request for a hard reset, which was then followed up by a crying emoji saying, "Now I'm sus." And even though he had already dug himself into a massive hole, W.I.P went on to claim that he didn't have a mic, couldn't turn one on to prove that it was live, while being so busy celebrating alone that he didn't bother to ever pull up his chat.
As soon as that run finished, there was legitimate reason to think that something was up. We started looking up his VODs, looking into his past runs. Eventually it got to a point where it was like, there's so much here that if he is actually legitimate, he has done himself no favors for looking like the most suspicious person on the planet. First off, the initial piece of evidence that we caught on W.I.P was that his sum of best changed in between 2 of his streams. All of the streams in December 25th, 26th have the same layout, and all of the streams on December 18, 19, 20 have the same layout, except for the world record VOD, where everything matches with the earlier session on December 20th. With everything lining up the way it does, it just makes no sense that the run was actually performed live on December 26th. And we know for a fact that it wasn't because he admitted to it being pre-recorded. On the 28th, we got confirmation, but they found the first actual concrete proof that something was cheated.
They actually managed to find something in his very first cheated run in Pokemon Diamond 80% Manipulus.
Okay, so on the left here, I have Rubentus's 80% Manipulus run, and then on the right, I have Gen 4 Static. Now, Gen 4 Static is a program that allows runners to search for specific seeds with either IV requirements, as you can see here, the ability, gender, all of that. So what I'm first going to do is search for the Chimchar Rubentus got in his run, and then see if I can find that Chimchar and hit it on emulator. As you can see, I'm just entering the IVs. All right, so we search it and we find this one seed. So now I'm going to copy this seed, And using a Lua script, I'm going to inject the seed onto the emulator right here, onto Desmond, as if I were doing the run now. But basically, in this scenario, NPCs will advance RNG. So if the RNG value is the same, the NPC, like the direction in which NPCs will turn, will match what I'm getting on emulator. So let's first observe what Rubentus gets. He gets up and then down, and that's it from the fat guy. So I'm going to inject the seed, and then let's see if we get a matching NPC result. Up and then down. Look at that. So I can also see what RNG frame his Chimchar is on. So right here, I can see that the Chimchar is on frame 88, and it has the exact same IVs as was seen at the end of the run. Now, let's do the exact same thing, the exact same searching process, but for Jadwi's run. So I'm gonna search with the exact same requirements. I'm gonna search, and there's nothing. Interesting. So this means that this Chimchar is not possible. There exists no seed that actually hits this Chimchar. This is in itself conclusive proof that Jadwi's Chimchar is not obtainable through legitimate play.
During this time, W.I.P had no idea that an investigation was going on, or that moderators were about to reach out to him about the evidence that they had found to see if he would come clean before banning him across all the Pokemon speedrunning servers. But before the moderators reached out, W.I.P officially announced he was retiring from Pokemon speedrunning forever the day after he got the 143, stating that he had now done everything he'd ever wanted to do by surpassing all of his speedrunning heroes, as well as a story about his life before straight up getting banned across all servers.
So why didn't we do anything sooner? And it's our standards were mostly lax because we had never been betrayed like this before. You're willing to trust people and give them the benefit of the doubt. And now that this has happened, we need to reevaluate that.
Following his ban, it was quickly reported by some of his former friends that he had now posted one more pastebin in response to all the cheating. This pastebin went into more detail about a select few runs that were cheated, even though we now know that there were a lot more. He also stated that he didn't actually care about the bounty and was gonna give it to his parents and friends in the community. But if you remember a certain section earlier in this video, it was very apparent that he actually did care about this money, because W.I.P was the only person throughout the entire community to actually go out of his way to ask for more information about these bounties, nearly stealing thousands of dollars and destroying any ounce of respect the community might have had for him.
W.I.P in his confession, one, he never apologized, and two, he tried to put forward excuses as to why he ended up doing the thing he did. Based on things he said and the way he's done things, I don't think he was capable of not doing it. I think he had to go out on a bang, so to speak, by getting something that most of the community thought was impossible.
Following the aftermath of the entire situation, W.I.P ended up being banned from Speedrun.com, deleted all of his videos, and got rid of his YouTube and Twitch channel. And while he might not have provided much more insight on his cheating or even an apology in his pastebin, he at least managed to provide the community with some of the most hilarious meme-worthy quotes that will last the ages. There's even a t-shirt being made with his 143 quote to truly cement his legacy as a cheater. Thanks so much if you tuned in this far. Consider subscribing to the channel, and if you want to follow some truly skilled Pokemon speedrunners making an actual impact in the categories W.I.P cheated in, look no further than the description of this video. And many thanks to the folks on screen right now who made this video a possibility.